Now in 2017, just 6 months after discovering street photography and buying my first camera, I took what would happen to be the trip of a lifetime. And coming in from the West, I was traveling to a country that I really didn't know a lot about. I just knew what was in the news and in the media cycle. And because of this, I had no idea what to expect when it came to street photography. And the whole plan for this trip was to visit family and to snap as many photos as I could. And the country that I was entering was China. And so as I say, I discovered street photography already, but this really was the trip that turned that interest into an obsession. Now the original purpose of this video was to go ahead and dig up some of the old stuff off my hard drives. I know I have some decent stuff sitting there and a lot of it has never been shared online. And in doing so, I got a little distracted by a folder titled China. And I knew there would be some decent stuff in this folder, but it's not a folder I've dug through in a long time. And so going through was really nice. I really did find some decent stuff in there. I gave them a little fresh edit and I'm going to present them to you today. I also think it's just really important to go over older work. You can really start to see and point out things that you really don't like and things that you really do like. With social media and everything, it's really easy to get caught into trends and end up photographing for things that get clicks instead of things that you enjoy. And as a bonus, I often find that you come across stuff that when you took it, you weren't a huge fan of, but your tastes have changed. So now you really like that. And funnily enough, the things that often that you did like when you took it, you don't like them so much anymore. They come across as a little cliche or a little cringe. And so before we get into it, I'll just let you know, I think I'm going to split this video into two parts. There are quite many photos, which is a good thing, but there is a risk that this video gets quite long in length. So if you really enjoy this series, please do leave a comment and let me know, and I'll make sure the second part comes out the week later. So without further ado, let's get into it. These are going to be mostly street photos, but I chucked a couple of little bonus ones in there just for fun also. So let's see what we have here for our first photo. Okay, so right off the bat, I have this photo that I actually really like. It's a group street portrait of these wonderful ladies here. I love the vibrancy in their clothing. I love the fact that they're all wearing sunglasses. I love the hairstyles. And I really like the fact that even though this is a group street portrait, that each one individually are their own character. I think what I enjoy most about this photo is just it's a very honest street portrait. I feel like you will see a lot of ladies of roughly this age kind of dressed in this style. However, these ladies in particular looked exceptional, and that's what drew myself to them. And they were kind enough to let me take their photo in a park that day. And you'll notice as I go through these old photos, there's a lot more street portraiture than some of my other work. And street portraiture is something that I've always loved. Obviously, I was shooting it right from the beginning. It's something I really want to do more of. However, just living in Finland, people are a lot more private, maybe a little bit more shy. So it's proving a little difficult, but going through these old photos has really made me want to return to it. And as I say, a lot more street portraiture. Here's another one that I enjoy quite a lot. This might have actually been photographed in the same park, actually. And this gentleman here was taking a little rest from the bright sunshine that day and was sitting in this kind of shaded gazebo area, which is how I was able to get the very dark background there. What I do like about it is just enough of the Chinese lettering to give it some context on where this photo is, because otherwise the subject is quite isolated. And that's something I don't want to lose too much when I shoot street photography, is I don't want to isolate the subject completely from the scene so that you have no context on where the photo was taken. I think the lighting in this photo could be a little less harsh, but it was bright in the middle of the day sunshine. It is what it is. And probably the only thing I don't really like also is just he happened to be wearing this lanyard, which is kind of the only really modern looking thing in the photo. And it throws me off a little bit, though it does give it some time context and that, you know, this isn't from the 1930s. But otherwise, I'm not the biggest fan of modern lanyards. So that's probably the only thing I'd remove from the photo, but otherwise I quite enjoy it. All right, I'm really hitting you up front with all the street portraits here, but there's another one I enjoy. There's not much to this one, it's pretty straightforward. However, I do like the expression on the gentleman. I feel like it makes me happy when I see this image, it makes me want to smile. And I do enjoy the fact that just by looking at this gentleman's face is that you can almost sense just a slither of life that he's lived written on his face there. Otherwise, pretty simple image. I put the color version in as well as the black and white because I feel like it works pretty well in both. Okay, so now we're getting into something a little more on the side of traditional street photography. You get a very Soul Lighter vibe from this one with the obscured faces. You also have this plastic fly net type thing blocking the entrance to the restaurant. I really like the fact that this Chinese trellis here is on the right hand side, giving it a little bit of a framing and just some extra texture there. You also have the Chinese lettering again on the left, giving it a little bit more context on as to where this photo is taken. And as far as cultural context goes, I know that eating with friends, maybe eating out with friends and having a couple of beers is a big part of Chinese culture. So I'm really happy I captured that side of things. And of course, I went with the classic black and white. If you know me, you know I love black and white. And I really enjoy this photo. This one here, I'm not sure if I was entirely successful at providing all of the context and the way that I shot the photo. But if you can notice there is a fishing rod and this man is fishing from a bridge into a river. And it was shot quite late in the evening or maybe even at night, so there's a lot of grain to it. This was shot on an older Canon camera, and I definitely shot it at a higher ISO to get the photo. I actually really like the grain. I feel like it actually works quite well in this photo. The other thing I like is just the way that he's gripping the bar. No disrespect to the man, obviously, but there's a very zoo-like quality, maybe with the cage in this image. And maybe there's a story there, how we often forget that we're also animals, given that we build these structures. Yet at the end of the day, we can also just be fishing from a bridge, trying to survive amongst ever-encroaching build-up of society and technology. Or I don't know, maybe that's too much of a reach. What do you think? Here's another one that was shot quite late at night, so the grain is a little bit high, there's a softness to the image. There was also multiple colors of, I guess, LED lights that were coming in from shops and things. So it made the image look a little strange. In color, it doesn't look great. And in black and white, as some of you might know who have edited photos, those multicolored LED lights can really make things look a little strange. I'm not super stoked on this image, but it's pretty fun. I like the gestures of the kid. I like that he's holding some sort of toy. He's got his fingers in his mouth. He's got bare feet. It's just so indicative of trying to photograph a child. And I think also coming in from the West, and well, certain countries in the West, is that, you know, it's just sort of also strange to me to see a kid out so late at night playing around. And if you're wondering, I did get the nod from the mother to take this photo also. And next up, we have a pretty classic shot from Tiananmen Square. This is kind of one of those photos you would just take while you're there. I'm sure many people have taken this picture. In my case, I don't think I got the greatest image. I think I could have been a little bit further back, or I'm not sure how zoomed in I was on my lens, but it's pretty tightly cropped and I would rather it to have a little more room around it. Though in this case, I do like the vibrancy of the colors. I love that it gives some cultural context, some historical context. You almost instantly know where this photo is from. At the same time, it just kind of feels like a little bit of a well-done tourist photo to me. Maybe if it was part of a photo story, it could work. Otherwise, as a standalone image, it's nothing too special. It's well composed-ish, straight lines, you know, rule of thirds, not much else to say. It's a nice picture. By the way, if you happen to be enjoying these photos and you're thinking maybe these are pretty good for someone who is only just 6 months in or had only done street photography a number of times, don't get too discouraged. Remember that I probably shot hundreds, if not thousands of photos on that trip, and these are some of the few that turned out pretty decent. There was a million throwaways as well, so please don't get discouraged while we're going through these. Now, given this image here has its fair share of imperfections, it did end up in my first ever street photography collection exhibition. There's something that I really like about images that have strong shapes in them. It's something that I look for in photography a lot. We have a society and a people which is very human. We have conversation and love and interactions which are all seemingly very fluid, but yet we're also constantly surrounded by these, which feel very inhumane even though they're built by humans, these strong structures, these strong shapes, whether it be buildings or overpasses or alleyways. And so the juxtaposition of the two is something that I quite often look for when I'm shooting street photography. I do wish the lighting on the gentleman's face here could have been a little bit better, although somehow it works and somehow it makes for just an interesting look. But otherwise, I think the strength of this image is definitely in its composition and in the shapes. Now here's a totally fun one. This is just one out on the street, one of those quick moments that you manage to capture. I love the expressions on the faces. Somehow one person looks a little bit surprised and the other one just looks so happy for her. I don't know what it is, but it's great. I love their outfits. And I don't know if you can notice, but there seems to be this kind of gold or yellow glow coming from the fan and up onto their faces, almost like the sun is hitting that and reflecting. Adds a really nice touch of color. It's obviously quite a busy image. There's some unnecessary things going on in the image, like this hand or arm on the right-hand side here. And you have a bit of busyness with the people who are up there in the background as well. So I would like it to be a little bit more isolated, or actually to have a little bit even more room and just sort of single out the subjects a little bit better than what I did here. But otherwise, it's a fun one. It's not something I would probably put in an exhibition or hang in a museum if I got the chance. But still, I enjoy it. It's fun. Similar story in this case, although this lady looks like one of the coolest characters I've ever seen. Such a great smile, so many great details in her clothing, on her skin. Just so cool. The only thing that I did was messing up was by being a little bit too close, I think. Or I could have gotten closer and got an actual portrait. I would have felt like I was missing out on the pose where she was, sort of how she was sitting, which I think is interesting. So maybe a little bit further back, and again, just isolating the subject a little bit more. But we're on the street. We're on very busy streets when we're in China. So sometimes you just have to take what you can get. I think some of my amateurness as a photographer are definitely showing in this one. So it's a bit of a bummer, but again, you got to start somewhere, and I can't complain. It's a pretty good image for one of my first. Okay, so this one's a special one to me, and if you know me at all, you'll know this is one of the favorite images that I've ever taken. And I happened to take it on one of the first street photography trips I ever went. The parts I like about the image outside of the obvious is the colors. They're all sort of matching. You've got this blue, you've got this orange. It happens to coincide with the bus at the back. You've got the Chinese lettering, again, giving it context to where it was taken. You've also got these little stains on the jacket here and there, and you have the folded up hat, kind of indicative of a mother that maybe had to throw her stuff together and look after her kid, because that's the #1 priority. And I don't know, just everything about it is so good. I really like this image. If you like it too, you can actually get it at macintoshphoto.com as a print, along with many other cool things, many other prints, and actually some t-shirts that I made too if you're interested. So go check that out. Now I went to something a little bit more fun and different. At that time when I was starting to shoot a bit of street photography, I was also trying to shoot a lot more portraits, and learning photography was really done through shooting photos of my friends. So I'm very grateful to them. I'm very grateful to this friend here too that we had in Beijing. These were just kind of impromptu. We were out on my brother's balcony and the light was just hitting perfect. It looked so amazing. There was the orange lighting coming through in the hair. And our friend there, I was like, look, can you stay there? Can you let me take a couple of pictures? We ended up shooting a few photos there just for fun. And I think they turned out really nice, especially again, for some of my first portraits ever taken. This was very also of the style at the time, so if they look a little bit dated now, that just is what it is. Photography and art, it moves and it changes. But I was happy with these at the time, and I think she was too, which is the main thing. Kind of just wanted to throw those in there for a little bit of fun, so you guys can also see other things I was up to at the time. Oh man, these guys are so cool too. This is another group street portrait here. And other than just being a genuinely decently composed image, I love the squat sit there that they've all got going on. I love the eye contact. I love that they allowed me to take this photo. You've got these little touches of color that are matching the sort of grays and the reds. But what I love most is these details right here. So this gentleman is holding what I believe is a walnut or something similar. And I'm going off a bit of a memory here from many years ago now. But the story I was told is that they will sort of spit on them and rub them together. And eventually the coarseness of the nut will actually wear down until they become smooth. And it's considered sort of like a meditation, or I guess somewhat like a stress ball. And so if you move down here to the pavement, you can actually see a little bit of pool of that saliva there as well. He's also ripping a tattoo, which if you don't know, I'm a tattoo artist, so I'm always gonna like the tattoos. I'm biased to that, but a little extra feature there. Tattoos aren't super common in China, although that is changing. But for someone maybe of that generation, it really wasn't that common at all, so hopefully he isn't being a bad boy. The other detail I like here is this guy's ripping one of the gnarliest thumbnails I've ever seen in my life, and probably uses it for something like work. But it's just another addition to this photo. These guys are total badasses. They look so cool. Super grateful they let me take their photo. Yeah, nothing else to it. It's awesome. And okay, this next one's a bit of a funny one. I remember this day in particular, I wasn't exactly looking for photos, though thankfully I did have my camera with me. So the background is not great and the composition is pretty mid, but this photo just makes me laugh every time. And it's kind of the type of photography I enjoy a lot more these days. If you haven't noticed already, there's this hilarious eye contact from this gentleman who's sitting in the back of a van here. Not much else to it, just makes me laugh. It's a fun one. It's nice to get a fun photo every now and again and not take things too seriously. Now this one's not the greatest photo, but I throw it in for a couple of reasons. One, I really love the fact that in Beijing in this case, there's so much lighting, and the lighting can really flood on the street and set this amazing mood especially at nighttime, of course. Here I think I could have gotten a lot closer, definitely the amateurness coming back in here. I could have used the steam from this outdoor cooking and dining area a bit more, and just got a better expression from the subject there. It's pretty hard to photograph anybody eating because most people don't look great when they're eating. But otherwise, I like that the chef is walking through the frame. It's a bit of a vibe. Again, maybe in a photo story about the city or something it would work. As a standalone street photo, not so great. But something attracts me to this photo. I don't know what it is exactly, but it's kind of, it's kind of mid, but I threw it in for you. Now, this kind of photography I don't necessarily love so much. It's one of those behind the person shots. It's really based on color solely, on why it's interesting. The only part I do like about it is the fact that this is a working class gentleman here. He's working at night, and photographing working class people is just something I like. I came from a working class family. I consider myself working class. So it's just something I want to make sure is captured on the street because I think it's avoided a lot, and I want to represent that. Again, could I have taken this photo another way, which would have made it more interesting? I'm not so sure. Like, I wasn't going to work the scene and interrupt this person's work, so maybe taking the photo from behind the person was the only way it was going to be. And let's face it, the main interesting thing about this photo is the colors, just that blue and orange opposite color wheel thing that people's eyes love to go to. And at the time that I took the photo, I probably found it fairly decent, although I do remember when I put it on social media, I put it in black and white. So even then I was trying to remove the color from my photos so that I wasn't attracting any unwanted attention. And last but not least, one of the hardest group selfies you've ever seen in your life. Let's just chuck this one in for a bit of fun. Looking pretty Beastie Boys here. This is just myself and a couple of friends that I was traveling with in China. It's just the top of like a fence post or something like that. It's a fun idea. If you ever see them out in your street, you can go and use the same technique for yourselves. And so as this video is getting a little long in length, I think I'm going to cut it short there. And as I say, if you enjoyed this video, please do leave a comment so I know to do more of this series. There's a ton of hard drives that I can dig through, a ton of different trips and just things from my home city that I can dig up and share with you. Because as I say, there's a lot of decent stuff there. I think it's a really good thing to do, and go and be critical of your own work. Please do it with your own work. You can also do it with other people's work. Ask those questions. What do I like about this? What don't I like about this? How can I adapt some of those things that I like into my current photography today and become the best photographer you can be? Thank you so much for watching. Stay tuned for part 2 of this series and plenty more coming throughout the year. And until then, happy creating. Peace.